Have you ever been home alone and felt like someone was watching you? Like right now. Turn around. Did you see that shadow move? No? Are you sure? Because I'm about to tell you something that will change how you see your own home forever. What if I told you that the family who lived in your house before you didn't actually move out? What if they're still there, right now, watching you from corners you can't see? Sounds crazy, right? But after you hear these 5 true stories, you'll understand why some people never really leave their homes, even after they die. Story 1. The Blackwood Estate. Let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell. She was just like you and me, a normal mom with a normal family who just wanted a nice house for her kids. Sarah was 32 years old. Her husband Tom worked at a bank. They had 2 beautiful children. 8-year-old Emma loved to draw pictures of butterflies. 6-year-old Jake was obsessed with toy cars. They were the perfect American family, and they thought they had found the perfect American home. The Blackwood Estate in Pennsylvania was huge. It was old, built in 1847, but that made it special. The house had 3 floors, 12 bedrooms, and windows so tall you could stand in them. The wooden floors were original, over 170 years old. They creaked when you walked on them, but in that charming old house way. The price was so low that Sarah actually asked the real estate agent if there was something wrong with it. The agent, her name was Linda, got this weird look on her face, just for a second. Then she smiled really big and said the previous owners had to move quickly for a job. That's all. Nothing wrong with the house at all. Sarah should have paid attention to that look. That tiny moment when Linda's mask slipped. But Sarah was too excited about the house to notice. Moving day was perfect. The sun was shining. The kids ran through the house laughing and claiming their bedrooms. Tom set up his home office in the library, which still had books from the 1800s on the shelves. Real leather books that smelled like history. Sarah spent the whole first week arranging furniture and hanging pictures. She wanted this house to be their forever home. She had no idea how right she was about that. Some families really do stay in their homes forever. Everything was perfect for exactly 7 days. Then on the 8th night, Emma woke up screaming. Sarah ran to her daughter's room so fast she almost fell on the stairs. She found Emma sitting straight up in bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the corner of her room. The empty corner. There was nothing there, just shadows. Baby, what's wrong? Did you have a bad dream? Sarah held her daughter tight. Emma didn't look at her mom. She kept staring at that corner. The man doesn't want us here, Mommy. He says this is his house. Sarah turned on all the lights. She showed Emma the corner was empty. No man, no anyone, just an old wooden chair they hadn't moved yet. But Emma kept insisting there was a man there, an angry man in old clothes who kept saying they needed to leave his house. Sarah stayed in Emma's room that night. She told herself kids have big imaginations. New house, new room, it's normal to be scared. But at exactly 2:47 a.m., Sarah woke up. She didn't know why. She just suddenly opened her eyes, wide awake, heart pounding, and she felt it. Someone was in the room with them. She could feel eyes on her, watching, waiting. She looked at the corner. Nothing, but the air felt thick, heavy, like before a thunderstorm. And there was a smell, like old clothes that had been in an attic too long, dusty and stale and somehow angry. The next night, Jake started waking up at the same time. 2:47 a.m. exactly. He would sit up in bed and stare at a different corner of his room. And he would say the same thing Emma said. The man is angry. He wants us to leave. Tom thought the kids were feeding off each other's fear. He put nightlights in their rooms. He checked the corners for spiders, or mice, or anything that might scare children. Nothing. He even slept in Jake's room one night to prove there was nothing to be afraid of. At 2:47 a.m., Tom woke up. He saw his son sitting up, staring at the corner. And Tom felt it too. That feeling of being watched, that heaviness in the air, that smell of old angry things. But he still saw nothing in the corner. Nothing his eyes could see anyway. But sometimes our eyes lie to us. Sometimes what we feel is more real than what we see. That's when the footsteps started. Every night at 2:47 a.m., they would hear footsteps in the hallway. Slow, heavy footsteps, like someone was dragging their feet. The footsteps would start at the end of the hall and stop right outside their bedroom door. Then silence. Sarah and Tom would lie in bed, holding their breath, waiting. After about 10 minutes, the footsteps would continue up to the 3rd floor. Tom tried to be brave. One night, he jumped out of bed and yanked open the door while the footsteps were right outside. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued. He could hear them, clear as day, walking right through the space where he was standing. Through him, like he wasn't even there. They called the police once. The officers came, searched the house, found nothing. One of the older cops pulled Sarah aside before leaving. "Ma'am, I grew up here. Everyone knows about the Blackwood house. You should leave, tonight. Don't pack. Just leave." But they didn't leave. Where would they go? They had put all their money into this house. Besides, Tom said, they were just sounds. Sounds couldn't hurt anyone. Tom was wrong. Some sounds are warnings, some sounds are threats, and some sounds are promises of terrible things to come. Sarah decided to research the house's history. She spent a whole day at the town library, going through old newspapers and records. What she found made her wish she had never looked. The house had a dark history. Very dark. In 1923, a man named Richard Blackwood had lived there with his wife Margaret and their 3 children. Richard had been a successful businessman, respected in the community. But something changed in him after they moved into the house. He started saying people were watching him. He could see faces in the walls. He could hear voices telling him his family was in danger, that someone was coming to hurt them. His wife tried to get him help. Doctors said he was having a nervous breakdown. They gave him medicine, but Richard got worse. He stopped sleeping. He would stand guard at the windows all night, holding a shotgun, protecting his family from dangers only he could see. On March 15, 1923, at exactly 2:47 a.m., Richard Blackwood snapped. But not in the way everyone thought he would. The newspaper said he killed his family to save them. He shot his wife first, then each child, aged 12, 9, and 7. Then he went to the attic and hung himself from the rafters. His journal was found later. The last entry, written in shaky handwriting, said, "The house wants blood. If I give it mine, maybe it will let them go. Maybe it will let them rest." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what Sarah found in the oldest records. Before the Blackwood house was built, the land had been the site of public executions. Between 1750 and 1840, over 200 people had been hanged on that exact spot. Murderers, thieves, and accused witches. They were buried in unmarked graves right where the house now stood. The house was literally built on the bones of the condemned. Sarah drove home in a daze. When she pulled into the driveway, she saw Tom standing on the porch. His face was white as paper. The kids were in the car, crying. While she had been at the library, something had happened. Tom had been working in his office when he heard the kids laughing upstairs. But the kids were at school. He ran upstairs to find every single door in the house wide open. Every bedroom door, every closet door, even the cabinet doors in the bathroom, all standing wide open. And in each doorway, there were wet footprints, as if someone soaking wet had stood in each doorway, looking into each room. But the worst was Emma's room. On the wall, written in what looked like mud but smelled like grave dirt, were the words, "Get out or join us." They left that night. They didn't pack anything except some clothes. They stayed in a hotel, planning to go back for their things in daylight. But that night in the hotel, Emma woke up at 2:47 a.m. screaming that the man had followed them. She said he was angry they left. He said they belonged to the house now. They had breathed its air, walked its floors, slept in its rooms. They were part of it now, forever. They never went back. They hired movers to get their things, but the movers quit after an hour. They said the house was wrong. They said they could hear voices in the walls, crying and begging. One mover swore he saw faces in the windows of rooms they had just confirmed were empty. Another said something grabbed his ankle when he was carrying a box downstairs. When he looked down, he saw a child's hand reaching out from inside the wall. The Mitchell family moved across the country to Oregon. They thought distance would help. But Emma and Jake still wake up at 2:47 a.m. sometimes. They say the man is still watching them. He's waiting for them to come home. He says the house misses them. He says the house is hungry. Sarah called me last month. She wanted to warn people about the Blackwood Estate. She said it's for sale again. The 5th family in 3 years to abandon it. She said she drives by it sometimes when she's in Pennsylvania visiting her mother. The house looks different each time. Windows are broken, then fixed. Doors are boarded up, then open. The grass is dead, then perfect. It's like the house is alive. Like it's trying different looks to attract the right family. A family with children. A family like hers was. She told me something else. Something that keeps her awake at night. She said when they lived there, she found old photos in the attic. Photos of every family that had lived in the house since 1847. And in every photo, in the background, in windows or shadows or corners, you could see them. The Blackwood family. Richard, Margaret, and the 3 children. Still there, still watching, still waiting. But here's the thing that really scared me. In the last photo she found, taken by the family who lived there before them, she saw something impossible. In the background, barely visible in an upstairs window, she could see herself, and Tom, and the kids, standing in the window of a room they hadn't moved into yet. A photo taken a year before they even knew the house existed. The house doesn't just trap the families who die there. It collects them. It pulls them in even before they arrive. And once you're in its collection, you never really leave. You become part of its history, whether you're alive or dead. Story 2. The Basement Apartment. Marcus Chen was a smart kid, 21 years old, studying computer science at the University of Washington in Seattle. He had a 4.0 GPA and was going to graduate early, but being smart doesn't mean you can't make terrible mistakes. And moving into that basement apartment was the worst mistake of Marcus's life. The apartment was listed on Craigslist for $500 a month. In Seattle, where a closet costs $1,500, this was impossible. Marcus thought it was a scam. But he called anyway. The landlord, Mr. Peterson, sounded like a grandfather. Warm, friendly, maybe a little lonely. He said the price was low because he wanted a quiet student, not a party person. Marcus was perfect. The apartment was in the basement of a big blue house in the Wallingford neighborhood. Nice area close to campus. Mr. Peterson lived upstairs. He was 73 years old, walked with a cane, and had the kindest smile Marcus had ever seen. How could someone with such a kind smile be hiding something so horrible? The apartment itself was actually nice. It had been renovated recently. New kitchen, new bathroom, fresh paint. It didn't feel like a basement at all, except for the small windows near the ceiling. There was even a separate entrance so Marcus wouldn't bother Mr. Peterson. Perfect for a student who stayed up late studying. Mr. Peterson had only one rule. One strange specific rule. In the bedroom closet, there was a small door, maybe 3 feet tall, painted white like the walls. It had a padlock on it. Mr. Peterson said it led to a crawl space where he stored personal items. Never ever open that door, he said. It's not part of your rental. Opening it breaks your lease immediately. Marcus thought it was weird, but whatever. For $500 a month in Seattle, Mr. Peterson could have whatever weird rules he wanted. Marcus signed the lease that day and moved in that weekend. The first month was great. Marcus studied, went to classes, played video games, lived his normal college life. He barely thought about the crawlspace door. It was hidden behind his hung-up clothes anyway, out of sight, out of mind. But then the scratching started. It was October when Marcus first heard it. He was studying late, around 2 a.m., when he heard scratching coming from the walls. Not loud, but persistent. Scratch, 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 pause. Scratch, 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 pause. Always in groups of 3. Marcus texted Mr. Peterson. "Hey, I think there might be mice in the walls." Hearing scratching sounds, Mr. Peterson replied immediately, which was weird for 2 a.m. "Do not investigate. Do not open the crawl space. I will handle it." But Mr. Peterson didn't handle it. The scratching got louder every night, and it started to move. First it was in the bedroom wall, then the living room, then the kitchen, like something was traveling through the walls, following Marcus from room to room. Marcus bought mousetraps. He put them everywhere. They were never touched. He bought poison. Nothing. He even bought one of those ultrasonic pest repellers. The scratching got louder, almost angry. Then the smell started. It was faint at first, sweet and rotten, like fruit that had gone bad, but not quite. It was more organic, like meat, old meat. The smell was strongest near the closet, near that locked door. Marcus complained to Mr. Peterson again. This time the old man came down to the apartment. When he smelled the odor, his face went pale. "It's probably a dead rat in the walls," he said quickly. "It'll go away. Just air out the apartment." But it didn't go away. It got worse. So much worse that Marcus had to sleep with his window open, even though it was November and freezing. His clothes started to smell. His food tasted wrong. Everything in the apartment was contaminated by that sick, sweet smell of decay. One night, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. The scratching was so loud it sounded like fingernails on wood. The smell was making him gag. He decided to look at the crawlspace door. Just look, not open it. He moved his clothes aside and shined his phone flashlight on the door. That's when he noticed something that made his skin crawl. The scratches weren't coming from behind the door. They were coming from in front of it. There were scratch marks on this side of the door. Fresh ones, like something had been trying to get in, not out. Marcus looked closer. The scratches formed patterns, letters, words. He could make out help, scratched over and over, and please, and names: Jennifer, Amy, Lisa, Sandra, Kate. Marcus's hands were shaking as he Googled those names along with Seattle and missing. The results made him sick. Jennifer Walsh, missing since 2003. Amy Rodriguez, missing since 2008. Lisa Park, missing since 2011. Sandra Brown, missing since 2015. Kate Miller, missing since 2018. All young women, all college students, all last seen in the Wallingford neighborhood. Marcus knew he should call the police right then. But he had to know. He had to see what was in that crawlspace. He got his toolbox and cut the padlock with bolt cutters. His hands were sweating so much he could barely grip the tools. The lock fell to the floor with a sound like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. He opened the door. The smell hit him like a physical force. He threw up immediately, his dinner splashing on the floor. But through his watering eyes, he could see into the crawlspace, and what he saw didn't make sense. The crawlspace was huge, much bigger than it should be. It extended far beyond what should have been the foundation of the house, and it wasn't empty. There were things in there, shapes, human shapes, some wrapped in plastic, some just lying there, and in the back, movement. Something was moving in the darkness. Marcus scrambled backward, trying to get away from the door. But then he heard a voice. Weak, barely human, but definitely a voice. Please. Help me, please. There was someone alive in there. Marcus called 911. He screamed at them to come immediately. Then, against every instinct in his body, he crawled into the crawlspace. He had to help whoever was in there. The crawlspace was like a maze. It branched off in different directions, some passages barely big enough to squeeze through. The smell was unbearable. Marcus threw up twice more as he crawled toward the voice. His phone flashlight showed horrible things that would haunt him forever. But he kept going. He found her in the furthest corner. Kate Miller. She had been missing for a year. She was chained to a pipe, barely alive, skeletal thin. Her fingernails were torn off from scratching at the walls, trying to signal someone, anyone, that she was there. Marcus tried to unchain her but couldn't. He held her hand and told her help was coming. She squeezed back weakly and whispered, "He feeds us once a week. Today is feeding day. He'll be coming soon." That's when Marcus heard it. Footsteps above them. Mr. Peterson's distinctive walk with his cane. Thump step, thump step, thump step. But it wasn't heading to the front door to let the police in. It was heading to the basement. Marcus heard the door to his apartment open. Heard Mr. Peterson call out, "Marcus, why is the crawlspace open? You broke the rule, Marcus. Now you have to join them." The voice wasn't the friendly grandfather anymore. It was cold, empty, like something pretending to be human. Marcus heard him coming down the stairs. The police sirens were getting closer, but not fast enough. Mr. Peterson appeared at the crawlspace entrance. In the dim light, Marcus could see his face was different. The kind smile was gone, replaced by something inhuman. His eyes were black, completely black, like a shark's eyes. 43 years I've been collecting them, Mr. Peterson said calmly. 1 or 2 a year. Never too many, never enough to draw attention. They stay fresh longer than you'd think down here. The cold helps. And the ones that die, well, they don't really leave. They become part of the foundation, part of the house itself. The police arrived just as Mr. Peterson was crawling into the space after Marcus. They arrested him, but he didn't resist. He just smiled that grandfather smile and said, "The house needs to feed. If not me, then someone else will do it. The house always finds someone." They found 5 bodies in the crawl space, but the space itself was wrong. It connected to old Seattle underground tunnels that had been sealed since the 1900s. The tunnels went on for miles. The full search took weeks. They found remains going back decades, not just from Mr. Peterson's time, from before, long before Kate Miller survived. She was in the hospital for months, but she recovered. She told Marcus that Mr. Peterson would come down every week with food and water. He would talk to them like they were his children. He would tell them about his day, about the weather, about the new tenants upstairs who had no idea what was under their feet. But the worst thing she told Marcus was about the others. The ones who had died. She said she could still hear them sometimes, scratching at the walls, trying to get out. Even though their bodies had been removed, something of them remained in that crawl space, trapped, still trying to escape. Mr. Peterson died in custody before trial. Heart attack, they said, but the guard who found him swore the cell was freezing cold, and there were scratch marks on the walls that hadn't been there before, 5 sets of scratch marks. Like 5 people had been clawing at the walls from the inside. The house was demolished. The city filled in the tunnels with concrete. They built a park on the land. A nice park with flowers and benches, but people don't stay there after dark. They say you can hear scratching sounds coming from underground, and sometimes on quiet nights you can hear voices, young women's voices, calling for help from beneath the earth. Marcus graduated and moved to California. He lives in a high-rise apartment now, 20th floor. No basement, no crawl spaces, no locked doors, but he still wakes up sometimes to the sound of scratching. He tells himself it's just the building settling, just pipes in the walls, just his imagination. But sometimes in the corner of his eye, he sees them. 5 young women standing in his apartment looking at him with grateful eyes, or maybe hungry eyes. He's never sure which. They never speak. They just watch him. Like they're waiting for something. Like they followed him from Seattle. Like saving Kate Miller connected him to them forever. He went to therapy. The therapist said it was PTSD, survivor's guilt, but the therapist couldn't explain why Marcus's apartment is always cold, why his neighbors complain about scratching sounds from his walls, why sometimes his webcam turns on by itself and in the reflection on his computer screen, he can see them, all 5 of them. Standing right behind him, Marcus sent me an email last week. He said he's been researching Mr. Peterson's past. The old man had lived in 12 different cities over his lifetime, always in houses with basements, always as a landlord to young people. And in every city, young women had gone missing. But here's the truly terrifying part. Mr. Peterson had a son who inherited his estate, a son who looks just like him, acts just like him, and recently bought a house with a basement in Portland. The house is being converted into student apartments, affordable apartments. The ads went up last week. Cheap rooms for quiet students. Kind landlord. Only one rule. Respect the locked doors. Marcus is trying to warn people. But who believes a story like this? Who believes that some houses are hungry? That some landlords are monsters? That some crawl spaces are portals to hell? You should believe it. Because right now, somewhere, a college student is looking at those ads. They're thinking about that cheap rent. They're ignoring that little voice in their head that says something's wrong. They're about to make the same mistake Marcus made. And the scratching continues. It always continues, because some hungers never die. They just find new ways to feed. Story 3, The Riverside Manor. Not all ghosts want to hurt you. Sometimes they just want to be remembered. Sometimes they just want to be loved. But sometimes, that need for love can be more terrifying than any hatred. Let me tell you about Dr. Patricia Williams and the children who wouldn't let go. Patricia was 42 years old, a successful pediatrician who had worked her whole life to afford her dream home. After her divorce, she wanted a fresh start for her and her 7-year-old daughter Lily. The Riverside Manor in Connecticut was everything she had dreamed of. Built in 2010, it was modern but elegant. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gorgeous kitchen with marble countertops, and huge windows overlooking the river. It even had a playroom for Lily. The previous owners had left suddenly. So suddenly that they left furniture behind. Good furniture, too. A leather couch, a dining table, and in what would be Lily's room, an antique rocking horse, and a trunk full of old toys. Patricia's real estate agent said they had moved to Europe for work and didn't want to ship everything. The furniture was included in the sale price. Patricia thought about getting rid of the old toys, but Lily fell in love with them immediately. Especially the rocking horse. It was beautiful, hand-carved wood with a real hair mane and tail. Lily named it Buttercup and rode it every day. The first week in the new house was perfect. Lily was happy. Patricia was settling into her new life. Everything was good. But then Lily started talking about her new friends. "Mommy, can Thomas and Mary play in my room?" Lily asked one afternoon. Patricia was happy her daughter was making friends already. "Of course, sweetheart." "Are they from the neighborhood?" Lily looked confused. "No, Mommy, they live here. They've always lived here." Patricia assumed Lily had created imaginary friends. It was normal for kids, especially after a big change like moving. She played along. "Well, tell Thomas and Mary they're welcome anytime." Lily smiled. "They said thank you. They like you, Mommy. They said you're nicer than the other mommies who lived here." That should have been Patricia's first warning. But she was a rational woman, a doctor. She didn't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. She believed in science, medicine, things you could see and prove. She would learn that some things don't need you to believe in them. They exist anyway. The imaginary friends became part of daily life. Lily would set places for them at dinner. She would read them stories. She would play games with them for hours, laughing and talking to empty air. Patricia thought it was cute. Healthy even. Lily was an only child. Imaginary friends were good for her development. But then Patricia started noticing things. Small things at first. The rocking horse would be in different positions when they came home. Toys would be arranged differently than how they left them. Lily's tea set would be out with 3 cups used, even though Patricia hadn't touched them. One evening, Patricia was making dinner when she heard Lily laughing upstairs. But it wasn't just Lily's laugh. She could hear other children laughing too. She ran upstairs thinking neighborhood kids had come over. But Lily was alone in her room, sitting in a circle with her toys. "Who was laughing with you, honey?" "Thomas and Mary, Mommy. They're so funny. Thomas can juggle, and Mary knows all these old songs." That night, Patricia tucked Lily into bed and sat in the living room with a glass of wine, trying to relax. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The house felt full, like there were more people in it than just her and Lily. She kept catching movement in her peripheral vision, but when she looked, nothing was there. Around midnight, she heard footsteps upstairs, small footsteps like children running. She went to check on Lily, but her daughter was fast asleep. Yet the footsteps continued, running from room to room above her. She followed the sounds, but they always stayed one room ahead. Finally, they stopped in the playroom. Patricia opened the playroom door and gasped. All of Lily's toys were arranged in a perfect circle. In the center, the rocking horse was moving back and forth on its own, not violently, just gently, like someone was riding it. As she watched, frozen in fear, she heard giggling. Children giggling. But she could see no one. She grabbed the rocking horse, stopping its movement. The giggling stopped immediately. The room felt suddenly cold, so cold she could see her breath. And then, just for a moment, she saw them. 2 children, a boy and a girl, standing by the window. They were transparent, like looking through fog. The boy looked about 8, the girl about 6. They were wearing old-fashioned clothes, maybe from the 1860s. They looked sad. Patricia blinked and they were gone. But she knew what she had seen. Her rational, scientific mind tried to explain it away. Stress, exhaustion, maybe a gas leak causing hallucinations. But deep down, she knew the truth. Her house was haunted. The next day, she went to the town library to research the land's history. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Crawford, gave her a knowing look when she asked about Riverside Manor. "Another family discovering the truth," Mrs. Crawford said sadly. "They never tell you when they sell that house. They never warn you about the children." The land where Riverside Manor stood had a tragic history. In 1864, there had been an orphanage there called Riverside Children's Home. It housed 30 children who had lost their parents in the Civil War. The winter of 1864 was the coldest on record. The orphanage, already struggling financially, couldn't afford heating coal. The man who ran it, Josiah Blackthorne, made a cruel decision. He would save money by not heating the children's dormitories. Only his quarters would be warm. 23 children froze to death that winter. Among them were Thomas and Mary Ashford, siblings aged 8 and 6. They were found frozen together, huddled in the same bed, trying to keep each other warm. Thomas had wrapped his sister in every blanket he could find, but it wasn't enough. They died holding each other. The orphanage was shut down after the tragedy. The building was demolished. Over the years, houses were built on the land, and every house had the same problem. Families with children would report strange experiences. Their kids would play with invisible friends. Toys would move on their own. And always, there was a coldness in the house that no amount of heating could fix. Patricia drove home in a daze. She found Lily in her room, having a tea party. 3 cups were set out, and this time, Patricia could see the steam rising from all 3 cups. Fresh hot tea that Patricia hadn't made. "Lily, I need to know about Thomas and Mary. What do they look like?" Lily described them perfectly. The old-fashioned clothes, the boy being older, the girl being small and thin. Then Lily said something that chilled Patricia to her bones. "They're always cold, Mommy. They asked if we could make a fire, but I told them we have heating. They don't understand what heating is. And they're so hungry. They say they haven't eaten in so long. Can we feed them?" That night, Patricia did something she never thought she would do. She set 2 extra places at dinner. Real places with real food. She felt foolish, but also somehow right. She even said, "Thomas, Mary, you're welcome at our table." The room got cold for a moment, then warm. And Patricia swears she heard a small voice say, "Thank you." From that night on, Patricia accepted Thomas and Mary as part of their household. She set places for them at meals. She read them bedtime stories along with Lily. She even bought them Christmas presents, which disappeared overnight, though Lily said Thomas and Mary loved them. Slowly, Patricia started to see them more clearly. They appeared as shadows at first, then as foggy shapes, then almost solid. They were thin, pale children with hollow eyes. But when Patricia smiled at them, they smiled back. When she spoke to them kindly, their faces lit up with joy. One night, Thomas appeared at the foot of Patricia's bed. She should have been terrified, but she wasn't. He looked so young, so vulnerable. "Thank you for seeing us," he said, his voice like wind through leaves. The others were afraid. They ran away. "But you stayed. You care. You're just children," Patricia said softly. "You deserve care." Mary appeared next to her brother. "We've been so lonely, so cold, so hungry for love. You and Lily, you make us feel alive again." Patricia learned their story from them directly. They told her about the orphanage, about the cruel winter, about dying in each other's arms. They told her how they stayed because they had nowhere else to go. No family to join in the afterlife. No one who remembered them. They were stuck. 2 children forever, 8 and 6, forever cold, forever hungry for the warmth of family. But they also told her about the others. The other 21 children who had died that winter. They were there too, in the house, in the walls, in the shadows, all of them waiting, hoping for someone to see them, to acknowledge them, to love them. Patricia made a decision. If her house was haunted by children, then she would be a mother to all of them. She started leaving out 23 plates of cookies. She read stories out loud to empty rooms. She said goodnight to shadows. She treated every cold spot as a child needing warmth. The house changed. The cold spots became warm. The sad feeling became peaceful. Patricia would see children playing in her yard. Transparent children in old clothes, but happy, laughing, playing like children should. Neighbors thought she was crazy, but Patricia didn't care. She was a pediatrician. She helped children, even dead ones. One night, all 23 children appeared to her. They stood in her living room, transparent but visible, smiling at her. "We have to go now," Thomas said. "You've given us what we needed. Love, recognition, a mother's care. We can move on now. Will you be okay?" Patricia asked, tears in her eyes. "We'll be together," Mary said. "All of us, a family. And we'll watch over you and Lily, always." They faded away like morning mist. The house felt different immediately, not empty but peaceful, like a held breath finally released. But the story doesn't end there. Because Patricia discovered something. The children hadn't completely gone. They had moved on, yes, but they left something behind. A gift, or maybe a curse, depending on how you look at it. Lily could now see all ghosts, not just Thomas and Mary, but any spirit that lingered. She would point out the old man sitting in the park, who had died there 10 years ago. She would wave at the woman in the grocery store, who had had a heart attack in aisle 3. She would talk to children at school that no other kids could see. Patricia took Lily to psychologists, worried about her daughter's mental health. But Lily wasn't crazy. She had been touched by the other side. The 23 children had given her a gift, or burden, of sight. She could see the dead as clearly as the living. Now Lily is 15. She's learned to hide her ability from most people, but she uses it to help spirits move on, just like her mother helped Thomas and Mary. She's become a bridge between worlds, a teenage girl who can speak to the dead and help them find peace. Patricia still lives in Riverside Manor. She says it's the warmest house she's ever lived in, warm with memories of children who were finally loved, warm with the gratitude of spirits who were finally seen, warm with the knowledge that love transcends death. But sometimes on very cold winter nights she can feel them. 23 small presences, watching over her and Lily, protecting them, loving them back, because some bonds can't be broken by death. Some families are made by choice, not blood. And some houses aren't haunted by evil, but by love so strong it survives even death itself. Story 4. The Mirror House. Let me tell you about something that happened just last year. This story is so scary that the family who lived through it still can't look at mirrors the same way. They cover every mirror in their new home with sheets. They brush their teeth in the dark. They do their makeup using phone cameras because they know what lives inside mirrors, and they know it's still watching them. Jake and Amanda Morrison were young parents with twin boys, Alex and Ben, who were only 5 years old. They bought a house in Portland, Oregon, not because they loved it, but because it was the only house they could afford. The real estate agent seemed nervous when she showed them around. She kept looking at the mirrors. Every room had mirrors. Big mirrors, small mirrors, antique mirrors, modern mirrors. The previous owner had been obsessed with them. These are all included with the house, the agent said quickly. Free of charge. The seller insisted they stay. Jake thought it was weird. But free stuff is free stuff, right? Amanda liked the mirrors. They made the small house look bigger. The boys loved making funny faces at themselves. It seemed perfect. Their first night in the house, Amanda was brushing her teeth before bed. She was tired from all the moving and unpacking. As she leaned over to spit out the toothpaste, she saw something in the bathroom mirror that made her freeze. Her reflection hadn't moved with her. It was still standing straight, staring at her, smiling. She jerked back up, and her reflection moved normally again. She rubbed her eyes. Just tired, she told herself. Just seeing things. But as she left the bathroom, she could have sworn she saw her reflection turn its head to watch her go. That same night, Jake woke up to use the bathroom. The hallway was dark, but the mirrors on the wall seemed to glow faintly. As he walked past them, he noticed something wrong. His reflection was walking slightly behind him. Not at the same time, but a second later, like it was following him instead of copying him. He stopped. His reflection kept walking for one more step before it stopped too. Jake's heart was pounding. He raised his hand. His reflection raised its hand. Slowly, like it was learning the movement. He ran back to the bedroom and locked the door. He didn't tell Amanda. She would think he was crazy. The next morning, the boys were eating breakfast when Alex said something that made Amanda's blood turn cold. "Mommy, why does the boy in the mirror have black eyes?" Amanda looked at the dining room mirror. She saw Alex's reflection, but it looked normal to her. "Blue eyes, just like the real Alex." "What do you mean, honey?" "The other Alex, the one in the mirror. His eyes are all black, and he doesn't blink. He just stares at me." Ben nodded. "The other Ben is scary too. He shows me his teeth, but not in a happy way." "Kids have imagination," Amanda told herself. "New house, new mirrors, they're just spooked." But that night, she started watching the mirrors more carefully. And that's when she saw it too. It was subtle at first, a reflection that lingered a moment too long, a shadow in the mirror that didn't match anything in the room, a face in the background that disappeared when she looked directly at it. The mirrors weren't reflecting reality. They were showing something else, something that lived inside them. Jake decided to research the house. What he found made him wish he hadn't looked. The previous owner, a man named Charles Reed, had been a collector of antique mirrors. But not just any mirrors. He specifically collected mirrors from places where people had died. Hospitals, morgues, old mansions where murders had happened. He believed that mirrors captured the souls of people who died in front of them. Charles had disappeared 3 years ago. The police found blood on several mirrors but no body. The case went cold. The house went up for sale. And now the Morrison family was living with his collection of soul-catching mirrors. That night, things got worse. Much worse. Amanda woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of crying. It was coming from the boys' room. She ran in to find Alex and Ben huddled together on one bed, pointing at the mirror on their closet door. "The other boys want to come out," Alex whispered. "They keep hitting the glass." Amanda looked at the mirror. She saw her boys' reflections, but they were wrong. The reflection boys were pressed against the glass from the inside, their mouths open in silent screams, their hands pounding on the mirror. But the real boys were on the bed, not moving. Then Amanda realized the truth. Those weren't reflections. Those were other children. Children who had been trapped in the mirror long ago. And they wanted out. Jake grabbed a blanket and threw it over the mirror. The crying stopped immediately. But then they heard it from another room. Then another. Soon, the whole house was filled with the sound of crying, screaming, pounding. Every mirror in the house had someone trapped inside, and they all wanted out at the same time. The family ran to the living room, the only room without mirrors. But as they caught their breath, Ben pointed at the window. In the reflection of the glass, they could see themselves. But behind their reflections stood dozens of people. Men, women, children, all from different time periods, all with dead eyes and pale skin, all trapped in the world of reflections. And at the front of the group was Charles Reed. Half of his face was missing, like he had been partially pulled through a mirror. He was smiling. "You can't leave," his reflection mouthed. "No one leaves. The mirrors need souls, fresh souls, young souls." The reflection started moving toward them in the window, not walking, but gliding, getting closer and closer to the surface of the glass. Jake grabbed a chair and smashed the window. The glass shattered, and the reflections vanished. But mirrors can't be destroyed that easily. The broken pieces on the floor each held a tiny reflection, and in each piece, a face stared up at them. Hundreds of faces and hundreds of fragments. The Morrisons ran outside and spent the night in their car. The next morning, they went back just to get their essential belongings. But something terrible had happened overnight. Every mirror in the house had cracked. Not broken, just cracked in spiderweb patterns. And in the center of each crack was a handprint, from the inside. As they grabbed their things, Amanda noticed something that made her scream. In the hallway mirror, she could see her family packing. But there were 2 of each of them, the real them and their reflections. But the reflections weren't copying them anymore. The reflection family was standing still, watching them leave, smiling. The reflection of Jake stepped forward and pressed its hand against the glass. The mirror cracked more. Then it spoke, and they could hear it clearly. "We'll follow you. Every mirror, every window, every puddle of water, every shiny surface. We'll always be there, waiting for you to look, waiting for you to get close enough. One day you'll slip up. One day you'll stand too close to a mirror for too long. And when you do, we'll pull you through. And you'll take our place on this side, while we take yours on that side." The Morrison family left and never went back. They moved to a new house, one they checked thoroughly for mirrors first. But the reflection family was right. They're always there, in every reflection, waiting. Sometimes Amanda catches a glimpse of her reflection moving wrong. Sometimes Jake sees his reflection smile when he's not smiling. Sometimes the boys see the other boys, the ones with black eyes, pressing their faces against mirrors in stores, in cars, in puddles on the street. The house in Portland is still for sale. The mirrors have been removed, the agent says. But people who visit the house say they still see faces in the windows. Still see hands pressing against glass that isn't there. Still hear crying from rooms that have no mirrors. Because here's the thing about mirrors. They don't just show us our reflection. They show us another world, a backwards world, where everything is reversed, including life and death. And sometimes, the things living in that backwards world want to trade places with us. The Morrison family knows the truth now. Every mirror is a doorway. Every reflection is alive. And somewhere in the world of mirrors, their reflection family is living their life in reverse, getting stronger, getting more real, waiting for the perfect moment to break through. Jake told me something that still gives me chills. He said, "You know what the scariest part is? Sometimes I look at my family, and I'm not sure if we're the real ones anymore. What if we already got pulled through? What if we're the reflections now, and we just don't know it? Look at a mirror right now. Look at your reflection. Does it look exactly like you, or is something slightly off? Are you sure you're on the right side of the glass? Are you absolutely sure?" Story 5, The Inheritance House. This last story is different from the others. This one is about a house that wasn't haunted by strangers. It was haunted by family, and sometimes family ghosts are the worst kind because they think they're protecting you. They think they're helping, but really, they're keeping you prisoner in ways you can't even imagine. Michael Chen was 26 years old when his grandmother died. He barely knew her. She had lived alone in a massive Victorian house in San Francisco for the last 40 years, refusing visitors, refusing help, refusing to leave. The family thought she was just stubborn. They didn't know she had a reason for staying. A terrible reason. When the will was read, everyone was shocked. Grandma Chen had left everything to Michael. The house, the money, everything. But there was a condition. He had to live in the house for 1 full year. If he left before the year was up, even for one night, he would lose everything. Michael's parents begged him not to do it. "That house is wrong," his mother said. "My mother was not herself in those last years. She talked to people who weren't there. She cooked meals for a full family when she lived alone. She set up bedrooms for children she didn't have. But Michael needed the money. He had student loans, credit card debt, 1 year in a free house, and he'd inherit enough to be set for life. How hard could it be? He moved in on October 1st. The house was huge, 3 stories, 6 bedrooms, a basement, an attic. It was also perfectly preserved, like stepping back in time to the 1950s. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, even the calendars on the walls were from decades ago. The first thing Michael noticed was the smell. Not a bad smell, but a specific smell, like Chinese cooking, like someone was always preparing a meal. He found the source in the kitchen, pots on the stove with fresh food. Still warm, a whole feast of traditional Chinese dishes his grandmother used to make. But his grandmother had been dead for 2 weeks. Who had been cooking? He threw the food away and went to bed. The next morning, the same food was back. Fresh, hot, perfectly prepared. And this time, there were 7 place settings at the dining table. 7 chairs pulled out. 7 sets of chopsticks laid out perfectly. Michael lived alone. That's when he found the photo albums. His grandmother had been keeping photo albums for 40 years. But they weren't filled with real photos. They were filled with drawings. Drawings of family members at different ages. Drawings of children growing up, getting married, having children of their own. A whole imaginary family tree that didn't exist. Or did it? That night, Michael heard voices downstairs. Multiple voices, speaking Cantonese. He crept to the stairs and looked down. The dining room was full of people. Asian family members of various ages, all dressed in old-fashioned clothes. They were eating dinner, talking, laughing, and at the head of the table sat his grandmother. Young, healthy, smiling. She looked up and saw him. "Michael, come join us. Your family is waiting." Michael ran back to his room and locked the door. This was insane. His grandmother was dead. Those people downstairs couldn't be real. But he could still hear them eating, talking, existing. The next morning, he found a note on his pillow. In his grandmother's handwriting, "Don't be rude to your family. They've been waiting so long to meet you." Michael decided to research the house's history. What he found in the city records destroyed everything he thought he knew about his family. In 1952, his grandmother had lived in this house with her husband and 5 children. But there had been a gas leak. Everyone died except her. Her entire family gone in one night. The trauma had broken her mind. She had continued living in the house, pretending her family was still alive, cooking for them, talking to them, taking care of them, for 70 years. And now, those imaginary family members weren't imaginary anymore. They were something else. Something created by decades of desperate love and crushing loneliness. His grandmother's grief had been so powerful, so constant, that it had given life to her delusions. The family she had lost had been replaced by a family made of pure emotional energy, ghosts that had never lived but existed anyway. That night, they came to his room. 7 figures stood around his bed. His grandfather, who had died before Michael was born. Aunts and uncles he had never met, cousins who had never existed, and they all looked at him with hollow eyes. "Your family," his grandfather said. "You belong with us, forever," Grandma promised. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, added. "She said you would come and complete our family. She said you would stay and never leave us alone again." Michael tried to run, but the front door wouldn't open. The windows were sealed. The house wouldn't let him leave. He was trapped. For days, the ghost family followed him everywhere. They sat with him at meals. They watched him sleep. They talked to him constantly in Cantonese, telling him stories about their lives that had never happened, showing him photos that didn't exist, sharing memories that were just his grandmother's desperate fantasies. And slowly, Michael began to understand the true horror of his situation. These weren't ghosts. They were something worse. They were manifestations of his grandmother's broken mind, and they needed him to exist. Without a living family member to anchor them, they would fade away. That's why his grandmother had never left. That's why she had brought him here. He was their battery, their connection to the living world. But it was draining him. Every day, Michael felt weaker. Every day, the ghost family felt more solid, more real. They were feeding on his life force, using his energy to maintain their existence. He tried to call for help, but his phone had no signal. He tried to email, but his laptop wouldn't connect to the internet. The house had cut him off from the outside world. It wanted to keep him. Forever. On the 7th night, his grandmother appeared to him. Not the ghost grandmother from the dining room, but his real grandmother. Old, frail, transparent. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said, tears running down her ghostly face. "I was so lonely, so heartbroken. I created them to fill the emptiness, but they became real. They became hungry. They needed life to sustain them. My life, and now yours. How do I stop them?" Michael begged. "You can't. I tried for 40 years. The only way is to leave. But if you leave, they'll follow you. They'll attach to you like they attach to me. You'll carry them wherever you go, and they'll drain everyone around you. Your friends, your future family, everyone you love will wither and die to feed them." Michael understood now. His grandmother hadn't stayed in the house because she was stubborn. She had stayed to protect everyone else. She had made herself a prisoner to keep these things contained. "There is one way," his grandmother whispered, "but it's terrible. You have to make them believe they're alive, truly alive. If they believe it completely, they'll let go of you. They'll become independent. But that means living their life forever, pretending they're your real family, never acknowledging that they're not real, never leaving, never having a life outside this house." Michael had a choice. Leave and condemn everyone he would ever meet to a slow death as these phantom family members drained them, or stay and live a lie for the rest of his life. For weeks, he fought against it. He tried every way to escape. He tried to destroy them with salt, with iron, with prayers. Nothing worked. They just stood there, watching him with sad eyes, asking why he was trying to hurt his family. Finally, exhausted and defeated, Michael gave in. He started pretending. He ate dinner with them. He talked to them. He celebrated fake birthdays and anniversaries. He looked at photo albums full of nothing and pretended to see memories. And something strange happened. The more he pretended, the more real it became. The ghost family started to feel like his real family. Their stories became his memories. Their love, as hollow as it was, started to fill the emptiness in his own life. Michael is still in that house. It's been 3 years now. He posts on social media sometimes, always from inside the house, always alone in the photos. But if you look carefully at the reflections in his eyes, you can see them, 7 figures standing behind the camera. His family, the family that never lived but will never die. He seems happy in the photos. But sometimes, late at night, neighbors report hearing him crying, sobbing like his heart is breaking. Because deep down he knows the truth. He's living with the delusions of a grief-stricken woman. He's feeding parasites made of sorrow and loneliness. And he can never leave. His cousin Lisa tried to visit him last month. She said the house felt full even though Michael was the only one there. She said she kept seeing movement in the corners of her eyes. She said Michael kept introducing her to empty chairs, telling her names of family members who didn't exist. And when she looked at Michael, really looked at him, she realized something terrifying. He was starting to fade, becoming transparent. like he was turning into one of them. Because that's the final horror. The ghost family doesn't just feed on the living. Eventually, they replace the living. Michael will become like them, a ghost that never died, but isn't alive. And then the house will need a new family member to move in, a new battery to keep them all existing. The will has already been changed. When Michael dies, the house will go to another young family member. Another grandchild who barely knew their grandmother. Another victim who thinks they're getting a free house. The cycle will continue. The family will grow, and the house will never, ever be empty. So there you have it. 5 true stories of haunted houses that should make you think twice about that creaky old house for sale down the street. That bargain mansion that's been on the market for years. That family home with a history no one wants to talk about. But you want to know the really scary part? These aren't special cases. These aren't 1 in a million situations. Every town has houses like these. Every neighborhood has that one house that no one wants to buy. Every family has that one relative who lives alone and swears they're not alone. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are thousands of people living in haunted houses. Some know it and have made peace with it. Some are fighting it every day. And some don't know it yet. They think those footsteps are just the house settling. They think those voices are just the TV next door. They think that feeling of being watched is just paranoia. But it's not. I've researched haunted houses for 10 years. I've interviewed hundreds of families, and here's what I've learned. Ghosts aren't always from the past. Sometimes we create them ourselves through grief, through loneliness, through fear. Sometimes the most dangerous haunting isn't from a ghost at all. It's from something that should never have existed, but does anyway. And sometimes, the scariest thing about a haunted house isn't what's inside it. It's realizing that you can never really leave. Because once something from the other side notices you, really notices you, it follows you. It attaches to you. It becomes part of your life whether you want it or not. Look around your home right now. Is there a room that's always cold? A corner your pets avoid? A mirror that seems to show things that aren't there? A door that opens by itself? Footsteps when everyone's asleep? Maybe you're living in a haunted house right now, and you just don't know it yet. Or maybe you do know it, and you've been too afraid to admit it. Too afraid to tell anyone because they'll think you're crazy. You're not crazy. The things you're experiencing are real. The fear you feel is justified. The presence you sense is actually there. But here's my advice, and please, please listen carefully. If you think your house is haunted, don't try to communicate with it. Don't use Ouija boards. Don't hold seances. Don't even acknowledge it. Because the moment you acknowledge it, you give it power. You make it real. You invite it into your life permanently. Some doors should stay closed. Some spirits should stay ignored. And some houses should stay empty. Thank you for joining me for these 5 terrifying true stories. I hope they've opened your eyes to the reality of haunted houses. I hope they've made you more aware of the signs. And I hope, truly hope, that you never have to experience anything like what these families went through. But if you do, if you find yourself in a house that feels wrong, in a situation you can't explain, with presences you can't see but can feel, remember these stories. Remember that you're not alone in this experience. Others have survived it. Others have escaped it. And whatever you do, whatever happens, don't let them make you think you're crazy. Don't let them isolate you. Don't let them trap you. Because that's what they want. The ghosts, the spirits, the things that haunt houses. They want you alone, afraid and trapped. They want you to themselves, forever. Stay safe out there. Trust your instincts. And if a house feels wrong, if a deal seems too good to be true, if everyone avoids that beautiful mansion on the hill, there's probably a reason. Some houses are meant to be homes. Others are meant to be prisons. Learn to tell the difference. It might just save your life, or at least, your soul. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them after these stories. And remember, every sound you hear tonight, every shadow you see, every feeling of being watched, it might just be your imagination, or it might not. You'll find out soon enough. Good night.